Steve here. It's the show where I answer your questions, and this week my first question comes from Darth Genjari, who says, "Hey Steve, I only recently subscribed to your channel seeking different views on topics to formulate a more complete opinion on social and political topics. What is your opinion on this tactic, and are you subscribed to any anti-SJW or alt-right YouTubers?" Well, to answer your second question first, no, I don't subscribe to any anti-SJW or alt-right YouTubers, for the same reason that I don't wash my face with battery acid. But in general, I agree with you that it is very important to seek out people who have a different opinion than yours so you can understand why they think the way they do, and through that also hopefully come to a better understanding of why you think the way you do. You know, if you can understand why you think someone is wrong, if indeed after examination you still think that they're wrong, then you can also hopefully better articulate why you think you are right. And you have not only a better understanding of them, but a better understanding of yourself and a better understanding of the issue at hand as you see it. So I think it's a good thing all around. It's the main reason why I continue to do my An Atheist Reads series, because it's important to me as an atheist to understand the arguments that people who are not atheists are making in defense of their theism, of their Christianity, in the specific case of the An Atheist Read series. I think that's important. But the reason that I don't include anti-SJWs or alt-righters in my survey of people who disagree with me is that I don't consider those to be legitimate viewpoints. I'm not going to argue with people about whether or not sexism and sex discrimination is still a problem in the West. I'm not going to argue with people about whether or not there is a component of racism and white supremacy in police brutality and criminal justice abuses. I'm not going to argue with people about whether or not trans folks deserve the right to exist safely and openly in public spaces. I'm just not going to argue about that because I don't think that's up for debate. And if you are an anti-feminist and you are someone who thinks that Black Lives Matter is a terrorist organization, or you are someone who thinks that the wage gap is a myth, or that women in the West are already equal or superior to men, or feminism is actually a hate movement against men, or any of these other just completely ignorant, silly, indefensible positions, you can go argue with someone else about that. There are other people on my side who are willing to argue with you about that. I'm not willing to argue with you about that. I want you to fuck off if that is your position. Fuck off away from me and go argue with someone else, because to me those things aren't up for debate. But in general, I think your tactic is a good one. It's good to understand why people who disagree with you think the way they think. But I also think it's very useful to be able to filter the things that you spend your time and effort engaging with. Because there are some points of view, and everybody has to make these determinations for themselves as to which points of view they consider worth paying attention to and which they don't. But I think it's a very good skill to be able to filter and determine which people who you disagree with are worth paying attention to and trying to understand, and which are worth just ignoring. Pablo Los Santos. Dear Steve, I like your Atheist Reads series, but I have to say I'm a bit conflicted on your expressing that it's okay for the white nationalist to get punched and how you make fun of it and say he deserved it, and you even gave a shout out to the musician who made the Nazi Punch song. There's a white woman living in my neighborhood and she's a racist. We have even gotten into arguments before where she has called me a donkey fucker to my face because I'm a mestizo Hispanic. Her Facebook is filled with racist things toward my people, how we are lazy or how we're taking all the jobs, and has stuff of Charles Manson who spoke negative things about Hispanics. As much as I hate her, I should never go and hit her. If I could ask you, how would you feel if I went up to this white racist woman and punched her in the face? Can we make fun and call it Nazi punch? I think it's for the best that you haven't punched the racist woman. I think that in general, violence is not a good thing. I don't advocate for violence. What I have said, though, about the Richard Spencer punch specifically, is that I don't feel bad when shitty things happen to shitty people. You're talking about someone who spreads that ignorance and hatred and bigotry, who is a toxic, malevolent influence in our society. So even more so when something terrible happens to someone like that, who is not only a shitty person, but is a shitty person in public on a platform that other people can hear and be influenced. No, of course I'm not going to feel bad about that. I'm not going to feel bad at all if something shitty happens to a shitty person. But I think that's different than saying you should go out and punch the neo-Nazis, or violence is the answer all the time. You should go out and punish people who are racist. I do believe in confronting racists. I don't believe in just standing there and letting them say they're racist. Shit, I believe that we as a society need to get back to a place where people don't feel emboldened and entitled to just spew racism without repercussions. Now, that doesn't mean violence. It doesn't mean we punch all the racists. But it does mean we stand up to them and we make it clear that we will not sit still and be quiet while they throw racism around. Thomas Swords, my question for you is, what other kinds of work have you done in your life? I'm curious about how offline work compares to your online, more public experience. What are the upsides and downsides of each for you? Really, the only other job that I've had as an adult that I had for any significant length of time was working as a member of the maintenance crew at a truck stop in Hagerstown. I worked there for 5 years. The work was not anything remotely enjoyable. The people I worked with were nice. That might be something that I miss doing the YouTube thing, is that my work is from home and it's mostly solitary. I mean, I interact with people online and I do hangouts and collab with people sometimes, but for the actual doing the videos is a solitary thing. Whereas when I worked at my job at the truck stop, I had coworkers, I was interacting with customers. It was a much more social environment, and there was some of that was very nice. The relationships that you form with people. But the upside of doing this is that I'm doing something that has meaning for me. I'm doing something that I think I'm good at, that I have a skill for. Lots of other people do YouTube channels, but nobody else can do my YouTube channel. Nobody else can make the videos I make. These are very personal and very much a product of my own creativity and my own experiences and my own choices. And there's something very special about that. It's something that I feel like I'm good at. One of the only things I think I'm actually good at. And it's fulfilling in a creative way, in an emotional way, in a manner that the work at the truck stop was not. That's really the main difference. The work that I did back there had its upsides, but didn't really mean anything to me. And this means something to me. And you can't really put a price on that. Ahoy Yerno, why does the extreme right constantly invent new terms? Nazis call themselves alt-right now, racists are race realists, and equality becomes social justice. Slavery becomes states' rights. It's almost as if they know how horrible their own positions are. I call myself a feminist without a shred of shame. Are Nazis ashamed of what they are? Where's their white pride? I think it's just rebranding. It's just strategy. It's just a cynical attempt to sort of sneak back into the legitimate conversation about politics and society by pretending to be something other than what they are. They can't call themselves Nazis. They can't call themselves white supremacists. They can't join the KKK because they know that those identities have been completely delegitimized and toxified, and nobody would take them seriously. And they would have very little influence in the mainstream of politics. They would be consigned to the fringes. So they don't call themselves white supremacists or white nationalists or Nazis. They call themselves the alt-right, and sadly, for a lot of people, it works because they say, oh no, Richard Spencer will say, I'm not a Nazi. The Nazis hate me. I'm not a white supremacist. White supremacists really don't like me. And then you read some of the things he's written or listen to some of the things he said, and you're like, yeah, but he sounds just like them. And you realize that it's horseshit. It's just rebranding. It's an attempt to buy their way back into a legitimate perception of them without actually changing their views. They moderate their views a little bit, You know, they change the way they express them a little bit, but the underlying ideologies are the same. It's just like in the 80s, the 70s and the 80s, when David Duke decided that he wasn't going to wear the robes in public anymore. He was going to dress in a suit, you know? And he wasn't going to say that the KKK was an organization that was against black folks or against Jews. He was going to say, hey, we're just an organization that is an advocate for the rights of white people. That's all we're doing. There's nothing wrong with that, is there? It's the same thing. It's just rebranding. It's just saying it's being the exact same racists they've always been, but finding a new spin on it so they can trick people into thinking that they're different and they're other than what they are. Mark Green. Steve, a friend invited me to watch a screening of The Red Pill, but I've heard that feminists are not supposed to watch the film because it is pro-men's rights. Do you think that it would be traitorish for a feminist to watch such a documentary? No, I don't think it would be traitorous to watch that movie if you are a feminist. I mean, I don't think that I betrayed atheism by watching Expelled, Ben Stein's dipshit creationism documentary. I don't think it would be treasonous as a feminist to go see The Red Pill. If you're worried about that, it might be worth it to find a way to see it without having to pay for it. You know, maybe wait for it to be available included with your subscription in like a streaming service or something. I mean, you're always going to have to pay for it in some way unless you just outright steal it. Like you download it from like the Pirate Bay or something. You download a torrent of it. But short of outright stealing it, you're going to have to pay for it in some way, or maybe get like complimentary tickets to a screening. I don't know. But other than that, there's nothing wrong with seeing it. You see it. You see what it is. You see how terrible it is, which I imagine that it is from what I've heard of it, and you formulate your opinion on it. Maybe you get a blog post out of it, or at least a good conversation out of it. Maybe you can go see it with people, and if you're a feminist and they are not a feminist, or they don't really know anything about it, and they go see the movie and they think that it has some interesting arguments, maybe you can have a talk with them about it and explain to them why you see it differently. It could be a good conversation starter. If you want to see it, if there's some reason you have to see it, then you should see it. And then you respond to it as you will. Or don't respond to it. Just sit there and watch it in the theater and fume and go home and just be pissed off. Whatever you want to do. Joe McClory, what is your least favorite storytelling trope? What is your favorite? One that always gets me is the bad guy giving a speech and the good guys hack the voice feed or a video feed around them and turn the public against them with their own words. I would say my least favorite trope, or at least the one that I don't like that comes to mind at the moment, is the one where the hero will tell one of the other heroes about some problem that is developing, but they won't give them all the information that they need. They'll just give them a little bit, and then they'll leave them in the dark for the rest of it, and then the plot will continue to unfold based on that, when it would have been a lot easier and saved a lot of trouble if the hero had just taken an extra 10 seconds and fully explained what was going on. Like, I was watching an old episode of MacGyver the other day, and MacGyver is just like, it's just trope city. You will not find a MacGyver episode that is not built on usually bad storytelling tropes. And it was the episode where Jack Dalton was brainwashed to assassinate a foreign dignitary, and MacGyver discovers a gun holster that has been mounted underneath a table at the reception area, and he's like, oh, that's not good. So he goes to tell Pete about it, and he's like, and he basically just says, Pete, where's Jack? There's trouble. And then he leaves. And he's like, well, tell Pete about the gun holster. Like, you're leaving out vital information. And it turns out not to matter, because, of course, Pete has been brainwashed as well. Spoiler for the 25-year-old MacGyver episode. But Pete has been brainwashed as well, so he just goes and hides the holster. But we don't know that yet. So it seems like MacGyver is just giving Pete totally incomplete information and then going off to continue the story, when he should have just taken 5 seconds and said, hey, Pete, I think there's an assassination plot to kill the guy who's coming here tonight. There's a gun holster hidden under the table. That doesn't seem real good to me. Maybe you should look into that. I'm going to go find Jack. That's all he had to do, but he didn't do it. And that happens a lot. That's a really common trope in like action movies and adventure TV shows. And as for favorite, I really love setups and payoffs, you know what I mean? Or callbacks. And I love them the most when they're not obvious, because sometimes a character will say a particular line, or a particular thing will happen, or a promise will be made from one character to another early in the film, and you'll think, okay, that's coming back. That's going to be a callback at the end of the movie. Something's going to happen, and they're going to say it again, and it's going to be full circle. But the good ones are the ones that you don't see coming, that you don't realize it's going to be a setup and a payoff until it actually happens. Those are the best ones. And when it works, that trope can be very, very effective. And I also like the trope when the guy who hosts the Q&A video goes from the part of the video where he gives more lengthy answers to questions to the part of the video where he gives really snappy, quick answers to questions. It's about to happen right now, actually, if you pay attention. It's a little something that I like to call the lightning round. Sabrina Lozides Meredith. Hey, Steve, what are your plans for Earth Day? Are you going to the March for Science in DC? Also, what do you do around the house to reduce your carbon footprint? Myself, I use reusable bags when shopping and try to drive as little as possible. What are some of your favorite things to do to help the environment? Yes, I am going to the March, the Science March on Earth Day. Those are my Earth Day plans. I can't wait for that. That's going to be a lot of fun. And I do a lot of little things around the house. I can't say that I go out of my way to like do environmentally friendly things, but you know, we don't go out very much for food. We cook here as opposed to going out to eat or going to fast food joints and generating more trash that way. We don't use paper plates. You know, we use and wash our own dishes. We don't generate any more garbage than we have to. I turn the lights out and turn the heat down in rooms that I'm not going to be in. Just little things like that to try and not only cut back on the carbon footprint and on the impact on the environment that we have, but also, you know, the power bill is lower that way too, which is a nice bonus. Lucas Hackett. Hey, Steve, if you had a weapon to protect yourself from the forces of evil, what would you use? Mario's Fire Flower, Mega Man's Gun Blaster, Donkey Kong's arms, or Sonic's awesome red speed shoes? Well, I would say Mario's Fire Flower because that's my favorite. I love throwing fireballs in Super Mario Brothers. But, I mean, Donkey Kong's arms, I mean, they're his arms. Like, they're part of him, so you can't lose those. Like, if Mario gets hit, you know, runs into a fucking Goomba, then there goes the fireball, right? You have to find another Fire Flower, but Donkey Kong's arms are Donkey Kong's arms. So maybe that would be the smart one, to just say, I wish I had big, humongous fucking arms. Germ-free cat. If you had the money to take one of SpaceX's lunar trips, would you go? Also, who would be your ideal co-astronaut and why? Yeah, I would absolutely go. I would totally go if I could afford to take a trip into space. If I could afford to go to the moon or to Mars or even just take a trip up into low Earth orbit and back, I would jump at the chance. I would do it in a moment, in a heartbeat. I wouldn't even have to think about it. And my ideal co-astronaut, I don't know. I mean, I would love to take my lovely wife with me, but if she didn't want to go, I would maybe want to take Jason Harding, because we could just talk about Star Trek the whole time, you know? That'd be fun. And if there are other people, we could totally alienate the other people on the ship. They'd be like, oh God, they're talking about fucking Star Trek. We're going to Mars. It's like a 2-year trip. Are they ever going to stop talking about fucking Star Trek? And that would be so much fun. Matt Machado. Steve, if you were a pro wrestler, what would your nickname be? I'm kind of partial to Steve the Shiv Shives. Yeah, the Shiv is nice, I guess. When I would play wrestling video games once upon a time, and I would always do the creator wrestler and make myself in the game, I was the shit, which is based on something that Kevin Nash said at WrestleMania 12 when he was getting back into the ring during his match with The Undertaker, and he just sort of looked at the camera and offhandedly said, I'm telling you, I'm the shit. And I thought that was really cool at the time. Or Hooker, which was Lou Thesz's nickname, which is like what they used to call a shooter, like a genuinely tough guy who could really wrestle. Something like that. Kevin Logan, is it just me or is Donald Trump's wig the most honest thing about the current American administration? This is one of the greatest comments I have ever seen. The brilliance of this on so many levels is a wonder to behold. Donald Trump's wig, which he doesn't actually have, is the most honest part of the presidential administration. I think that is I think that is brilliant. It is brilliant. Kev. That is a splendid piece of writing, my friend. You are truly a talented man. Big Player Double A, I know from listening to Late Seating that you are a big fan of the late Bill Paxton. What are your top 5 movies that he has appeared in? Oh, respect to Bill Paxton. I was never a fan of his, but he is no longer with us, and he was a very prolific actor, and he did appear in quite a few films that I did enjoy, and some of those films would be Aliens, Next of Kin, which is a Swayze vehicle, but still Paxton's in there. Apollo 13, that's 3. A Simple Plan, really good movie. And what's the fourth one? What's the fourth Bill? Oh, Near Dark. So those are some good movies that Bill Paxton was in. And there are more. If I looked up his filmography, I could probably name a few more. David Edwards, what's your dream non-YouTube job? Screenwriter, screenplay fixer, voice artist? Yeah, those would all be good. Of those 3, I'd probably screenwriter would be my preferred job, or podcaster. Podcasting is awesome, and what little of it that I've done. Something like that. You know, basically finding other ways to do the same general thing that I do here. Shadowman4710, Steve, cabbage or tomatoes? Oh, cabbage. I am not a fan of untransformed tomatoes. Put tomatoes in a sauce or ketchup or salsa, then yeah, I can go for tomatoes. But like just tomatoes, like sliced tomatoes or whole tomatoes, or even stewed tomatoes, not a fan at all. But cabbage, I am all about cabbage. I love cabbage. Adrian Pedro Cabrera Frias. Hey Steve, I see a lot of people who want Trump out, which I agree with, but many of them bizarrely don't seem to have a problem with Mike Pence becoming president. What do you think about that? Because to me it seems just as bad, maybe even worse. Also, do you think science has ruined dinosaurs? It's like my friend and patron Anya has said she said a couple months ago in one of our monthly Patreon hangouts, that it's like choosing what type of cancer you want. You know, if you have to have a kind of cancer, if not having cancer is not an option, then you're going to want the cancer that there's a treatment for, not the cancer that's going to kill you. You know, and Mike Pence is the cancer that there's a treatment for. And no, I don't think science has ruined dinosaurs. I think it's cool that dinosaurs had feathers, personally. Animation! Hi, Anna. Hey, Steve, I just listened to you, Jason, and Aaron rip Armageddon to shreds on both Late Seating and Cinetific, each in your own unique styles. It made me wonder, has there ever been a movie that has swept every movie-themed podcast on the Lemme Listen roster? If not, what would be your pick for a Lemme Listen Grand Slam? No, there has never been a movie that has swept every movie podcast, because there's also Filmtastic Voyage that's hosted by Jason's brother. And I don't think that there's ever been a movie that has swept all of them. There have been movies that have appeared on both Late Seating and Cinetific. I think another one would be Jurassic Park, besides Armageddon. But yeah, if we wanted to do one that would sweep all of the movie podcasts in the Lemme Listen family, I don't know. If you wanted to do a good movie, I think a good one would be 2001, because it's a great movie, and also there's a lot of sciencey stuff that they could talk about on Cinetific. So maybe that's a possibility, you know. Spaz Fox, do you have your home's floor marked to set up your camera and lights for every video, or do you have it pretty much memorized by now? I ask because I'm a behind-the-scenes buff, and I'm curious if your house is littered with bits of masking tape because it's your job. No, actually, I don't mark sometimes I will mark my spot if I need to be in a particular place for a given shot, but I don't mark like where the camera sets up or the light setups are, because I guess I just have it memorized by this point. And the shots for the different series are all generally the same, but they're not identical. Like the shot I'm in now that I use for You Had to Ask, it's slightly different than last week or the week before, because the camera and the lights are in slightly different places each time, but it's the same general shot, and that's good enough for me. Chris Hansen, not really a question, but oh well. My girlfriend beat leukemia's ass, so I just want to tell the world what an awesome, strong lady I conned into being with me. I guess I'm in the shout it from the rooftops phase. I love you, Tracy. Well, good for you. Good for Tracy. Congratulations on beating leukemia. Chris, good on you for shouting it from the rooftops. I think that's awesome, and I'm glad, even though it wasn't a question, I wanted to include it anyway, because I think that's great. I'm glad that Tracy has beat leukemia, and I think it's awesome that you're celebrating. I hope that you two can celebrate for a long time. Hey, that's it for the questions. That's it for pretty much everything except two things. First, there's the shout out. And the shout out this week goes to an organization called the National Association of Free and Charitable Clinics. And this is a recommendation I'm making to you in light of the Republicans releasing their replacement plan for Obamacare this week that is such a shit show. Even a lot of Republicans don't support it. It's terrible. It's awful. You should oppose it with every fiber of your being if you are an American and you care about yourself or other Americans having access to affordable quality health care. This replacement to the Affordable Care Act should be opposed and defeated and resisted with every ounce of energy we have. It's absolutely awful. It's abominable. And the people who proposed it are monsters, and they should be ashamed of themselves because people are going to fucking die if this health care plan becomes law. Fuck them and fuck their plan. And one of the things that makes it so monstrous is that it will make it more difficult for people living on low incomes to get access to health care. And one of the stopgap measures that allows people on low incomes to still have access to care, even in the current system, is the existence of free and low-cost clinics. Free clinics who offer health care to people who are uninsured or underinsured despite their ability to pay, whether they can afford to pay for it or not. They're an incredibly valuable and vital and necessary service, and the National Association of Free and Charitable Clinics represents them and supports them, and they really need your help now more than ever. So as you oppose the new healthcare reform bill, also maybe take some time to learn about the National Association of Free and Charitable Clinics and spread the word, and maybe even donate to help them in their operations if you can afford it. It's a really, really good cause and a very necessary cause now more than ever. And last but not least, I also want to remind you to check out the aforementioned, thanks to animation, Lemme Listen podcasts. These are podcasts that are created and co-hosted for the most part by my very good pal and possible future astronaut buddy, Jason Harding, aka Jason with a D, the puppet master of Opinionville. There's a whole bunch of awesome podcasts in the Lemme Listen podcast family. There is Lemme Finish, the original, which is co-hosted by Jason and Finite Atticus. There's American Monsters and How to Destroy Them, the hilarious improv comedy podcast. There is Filmtastic Voyage, hosted by Mike and Alex. There's Cinetific, co-hosted by Professor Jason and Professor Aaron. There is the brand new Lemme Listen podcast, 3 for Adventure. And there is, of course, last but certainly not least, the podcast that I'm in, that I co-host with Jason, Late Seating, the movie review podcast where we look at classic films that have a reputation of either being great or terrible, and we give them a fresh review, and we make fun of them for your listening enjoyment, and we decide for ourselves whether or not the given film deserves its reputation, whether that reputation is good or bad. And you can listen to our most recent episode of the Late Seating podcast, which is from last week. We do it every 2 weeks. And the most recent episode is about Conan the Barbarian. You can listen to that, and you can also prepare for next week's show. Our brand new episode comes out next week, and it will be about the classic 1950s science fiction film Forbidden Planet. So if you want to do your homework, if you haven't seen Forbidden Planet or you haven't seen it in a while and you want to get all the jokes, watch Forbidden Planet and then listen to our new episode of Late Seating next week. And you can listen to all of the episodes of Late Seating and all of the episodes of all of the wonderful Lemme Listen podcasts by going to lemmelistenpodcast.com. And you won't be sorry if you do, I promise. And if you do listen to the Lemme Listen podcast and you do regret it, that's your problem. Okay, that's it, everybody. I'm done. I'm out of here. Please, as always, leave a comment on this video. Ask me your question for next time. You can ask me anything about anything. Nothing is too serious. Nothing is too silly. But in order for me to do this, you have to ask. So please do leave a comment and ask me your question for next time. I will answer as many of your questions as I possibly can in the next video. So until then, take care, everybody. Hey folks, one more thing before I go. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe. And also, please consider helping me to make more videos like this one by supporting this channel through Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/Steve Shives to become a patron. Thanks again so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.